Congratulations on buying the Bowflex Xtreme SE from the makers of what I believe to be the best home fitness equipment on the market today. I'm Tom Purvis. I'm a registered physical therapist, a professional trainer, and I also teach trainers, therapists, and other medical professionals the science of movement and proper exercise in seminars all over the country. I'm going to introduce you to your new Bowflex Xtreme SE and show you how to get the most out of the equipment and your workouts. This is key not only to your success over the next few weeks, but more importantly, to developing a lifestyle you can maintain for the rest of your life. The Bowflex Xtreme SE is the latest model in the Bowflex Xtreme line, and it has some great new features designed to enhance the way the machine looks, the way it feels, and the way it works your muscles for real results in less time. Now, because the basic functions of the Xtreme SE are the same as the previous model, we'll be demonstrating some of the exercises on the original Bowflex Xtreme. However, when we demonstrate new features such as the ab crunch station, we'll show you what the Bowflex Xtreme SE is all about. For more information on the new ab station, go directly to the ab section of this DVD. Before you begin any exercise program, please consult your physician. Only he or she can determine if it's safe for you to begin exercising. Don't take my words of caution lightly. The first thing to consider when setting up your Bowflex in your workout area for the first time is space. You want to find a location in your home where you can have unrestricted movement for all of the exercises that you want to do. That means you need a minimum area of 6 by 8 feet to feel comfortable when you move from exercise to exercise. You should also place your machine away from high traffic areas, and be sure to keep children away from the machine during your workouts. We craft each Bowflex under high quality control standards, but ensuring that your machine is in good working condition is up to you. Therefore, proper inspection before each use is very important. Before each workout, inspect all fasteners, snap hooks, cables, attachments, bars, etc. for proper function. If you note any loosening or wear, do not use your machine. Try to tighten your fasteners, or if you have any trouble, contact our customer service department immediately. Now I want to go through the machine top to bottom and point out features, highlights, and general safety tips. Let's start with the Bowflex power rods. The first thing you realize is that they move and flex. Never stand in the path of the rods. When you go to hook up the rods, do it like this. Stand away from the path of the rods and keep your face away. You can hook up multiple rods at once, but you should always remove and add rods one at a time. Always control the rod when you remove it. Never just let it go and snap back. We supply you with a rod binding strap that can be wrapped around the power rods, which helps to keep them straight and performing at their strongest. And we strongly recommend that you bind the power rods after each workout. From a safety standpoint, you want to inspect the rods, the hooks, the snap hooks, cables, pulleys, hand grips, and all other bolts and fasteners before each workout. You want to make sure that there's no wear and tear and loose bolts or fasteners. If you encounter any issues, do not use the machine. Call our customer service department immediately. The lat tower enhances exercises that work back, shoulder, and triceps muscles. Before using the lat pull down, make sure that all fasteners are in place and tightened. Make sure the lat tower's cables are securely fastened to the primary Bowflex cables. In addition, make sure that the adjustable pulleys are in one of the two widest positions. Always use the bar holders to support the bent lat bar or remove it when not in use. Do not hang or perform chin-ups from the lat tower. Never pull on the lat bar unless there's resistance attached to it. The Xtreme's adjustable pulley system gives you the ability to vary both the upper and lower pulley positions for different exercises. You can also vary your angle of resistance within a single exercise to create different effects on the muscles. To adjust pulley positions, unscrew the lock knob, then pull the knob outward and slide the pulley to the desired position. Be sure to retighten the knob once its new position is set. To use the squat station and lower pulleys, run the longer cable extensions through the squat frame pulley and bring them up to connect with the primary cables at the crossbar pulleys. The primary cables should run through the crossbar pulleys, down to the rear frame pulleys, and then back up to the power rods. Make sure the cables on both sides follow the correct routing through the pulleys. And as always, inspect the pulleys and hardware each time before using the machine. Remember, there are 4 different sets of pulleys on your Bowflex Xtreme, 2 of which are adjustable.
The seat height on your Bowflex is adjustable, and it's easy to do. Simply lift the seat from the front and pull it off to adjust. The seat height will vary with your body size and the exercise, so pay close attention to each exercise demo to determine the proper seat height. The Bowflex leg attachment is designed to add variation to your leg exercises. If your Xtreme has a leg attachment, make sure that all fasteners are in place and tightened before use. Check that the attachment's cables are securely fastened to the primary Bowflex cables. Always use the lock knobs to secure the leg attachment to your Bowflex. Your hand grip is very unique. You can use it 5 different ways. Standard grip grasps the handle and the cuff together to form a grip without inserting your hand through the cuff portion. Hammer grip, where the grip is in line with the cable. Hand cuff grip, slip your hand through the cuff portion so the foam pad rests on the back of your hand and grasp the remainder of the grip that's sitting in your palm. Ankle cuff, the cuff opening can be made larger to accommodate your ankle. And the arch cuff, the D-ring is on top of your foot, the handle is under your arch, and the cuff is behind your heel. The squat platform pulley system is a great addition to the Bowflex. It basically provides a downward direction of resistance for a variety of exercises, such as squats, deadlifts, bent over rows, even biceps curls. To use this attachment, simply run the long cable extensions through the squat frame pulleys and attach them to the squat straps. The adjustable webbing on these straps allows you to set the distance between the bar and the pulleys, or even the hand grips in the pulleys. This allows you to stand up all the way for squats, or take up the slack to perform bent over barbell rows. As we stated before, consult your physician before beginning any exercise program. Once you're ready to begin, please familiarize yourself with your training manual and watch the instructional portion of this tape for proper form and use of your machine. Overall, your Bowflex Xtreme requires very little maintenance. To keep your Bowflex in top condition, check all fasteners and power rod caps before each workout and tighten as needed. As always, check all the fasteners, pulleys, and webbing for wear and tear. If you find anything wrong, stop using your Bowflex and call customer service. I wanted to take just a minute and tell you a little bit about the resistance device in your Bowflex. Now, you may have noticed us using this term before, power rods. The power rod is what gives the Bowflex its unique tension for a resistance device. And this thing is not just fiberglass. A lot of people say, so it's like a bow and arrow and it just bends and it's like fiberglass. Actually, no. It's a composite. It's a polymer that was designed specifically for the purpose of creating resistance in this exercise device. You'll notice that on the end of the power rods, there's a number labeling the potential resistance within this specific rod. Now, this is a 10, for example. Now, when I first hook up this rod, you'll notice there's a slight bend in it. And that creates about 2/3 of the resistance that's labeled on here. So at 10 pounds, I'm getting, roughly 6 pounds of resistance at the starting position with this 10-pound rod. As it continues to bend, I'm going to have progressive or slightly increasing resistance. And when it goes all the way to the bottom, where the cable runs out of room and we're touching the pulley here, I will have roughly 100% of the labeled resistance. Now that's going to be true of the 50s and the 10s and the 30s. And of course, we're going to use combinations of these rods to create every variation you want between 5 pounds and up to 210, 310, or 410 pounds, depending upon your specific Bowflex. Now, before worrying about how much resistance to hook up, take the time to learn the proper movement. Then finding the proper resistance is critical. It depends on your current activity level and how well you learn that movement. The key, start light. You should feel only minimal challenge in the beginning. Let your tissues adapt, and over the course of the next few workouts, slowly add resistance until you fatigue at your desired repetition range. So if your goal is to do 10 repetitions, you're going to work up to find the weight that allows you to do 10 perfect repetitions, but not 11. The following section is not meant to be a work-along workout video. It's meant to provide some instruction and insight into how to get the most out of every exercise Bowflex has to offer. And I repeat, this is not a workout video. It's an instructional video for technique. This is the bench press. You're going to sit facing outward on the machine. So Andy, go ahead and have a seat right there. And you will have wanted to adjust the seat specifically for you for this exercise. Now what that should look like, you're going to want to adjust from the cable. You're going to look at the cable, not necessarily the pulley and not necessarily this cross arm. And this cable right here where it comes off the top should be pretty close to your armpit, kind of that height right there, not the top of your shoulder. And you could go lower, but the main thing is not to go too high, okay? Now, the rest is pretty simple. You're going to reach back and grab the handles on each side. And we're going to start from this position back here. And so Andy's going to bring his hands palm down, facing towards the ground. And notice that the cable or the handle is right against his forearm. He's not down here, which is going to put some rotation in his arm that we don't want. So he's right here. How's that feel?
Feels great.
Perfect. So now what he's going to think about is keeping his rib cage up high and pushing straight forward towards the center, nice and slowly. And back, forward again, and go ahead and do a few reps for me, Andy. One of the things that you can manipulate or vary on the bench press is the wide pulley position. And we suggest that you use one of the 3 wider positions. And this will actually change the difficulty of the exercise as well. So, you will probably want to readjust the amount of weight you decide to use if you change the pulley position. Don't try to use the same weight for each one of those variations. How's it feel?
Feels good.
It's looking perfect. Now, one of the things Andy does that you're going to want to really work on is keeping everything tight and not letting your shoulders, show them what it looks like when you throw your shoulders forward. Yeah, see how you threw those forward a little bit? You're going to want to keep them back a little bit, kind of shrugged backwards. If you can do that, you will feel all these muscles up here like never before. For the chest fly, you'll want to sit facing outward on the machine, and where the seat is positioned will be critical. So, we want the cable, not necessarily the pulley, not necessarily the cross arm, but the cable to be just about at armpit height. That's a pretty good place, and it could be lower. The main thing we don't want is for it to be higher. We don't want it up here pulling you into a really crummy position, okay? Now for the fly, Andy, you're going to help me. We're going to move this adjustable pulley all the way out there. And actually the fly, the chest fly on the Bowflex Xtreme is really a neat combination of maybe a dumbbell fly you do in the gym and a cable crossover type motion you do in the gym. And I really haven't seen any other home pieces that do that. Have you?
No, I haven't.
Now, what do you think about the weight for the fly? Typically we need to go a little lighter.
Should be fine.
Is it fine? Okay. Yeah. You're tougher than I am, buddy. Okay, grab a hold over there. And before we just start yanking on this thing, we are going to get set. We're going to position the body perfectly, real slight arch in the low back, or you can flatten it if you want to, if that's more comfortable for you. It's nice to put the feet on the squat plate rather than on the floor because that keeps your knees a little higher and again, changes your lumbar position or your low back position, and that's really nice. So the first thing we're going to do is lift that chest a little bit and pinch those shoulder blades back a little bit, and you're going to want to do this, I'm telling you. And the next thing we're going to do is slowly squeeze in an arc from each side towards the center. That is nice. And on this exercise, because of the angle of resistance here, if he actually let his shoulder blades come forward some, that would be fine too. You need to manipulate that based on what you want to feel and what you want to achieve. So he's going to do 10 to 12 reps, and you can manipulate your rep range depending upon what you desire to achieve. One of the nice things I noticed that as he comes back, he is stopping his arm when his elbow or when his upper arm gets even with his shoulders. And that's a really nice range. To go further back there is what a lot of people suggest, but I'm telling you right now as a physical therapist, that has proven to be a very bad idea for the shoulder joint itself. Now, one of the things we're going to be able to do with the fly, this is a more traditional flat bench type of fly. We're going to be able to do incline flies and decline flies, just like we're going to be able to do incline presses and decline presses, which we're going to look at right now. This is the incline press, and actually this extreme configuration allows us to do this, well, so much better than we ever could before. So the first thing we need to do is adjust the seat height, and take note where you had your seat when you were doing the regular bench press. Andy has it right here in what we could call the third post from the top. That means he's going to have two potential options for seat height. Each option will change the amount of incline that he's going to be able to participate in. So that again is a great variation. You're going to have two incline options there, see? So I'm going to go ahead and take it up to the higher one, all right? So that was it. This is going to be his highest incline option because it's going to put his body up higher. Go ahead and have a seat. Let's take a look at that. His body is going to be higher. So in order to keep his alignment with the cables, we're going to have to push upward. And you'll see what I mean. So here we are again. We're going to grab hold. You notice we've got the adjustable crossbar or crossarm pulley here in one of the outer three positions. All he has to do is look for the same thing he did initially with the bench press and keep the handle or cable right on his arm, aligned with his arm. So he's going to push up at an angle towards the center, and that is perfect. That is just perfect. He's going to keep his rib cage up, and if you practice like I asked you to, before you ever started your workout and choosing a bunch of heavy weight, then you've got this down already, right? So keep those shoulder blades back just a tiny bit. You don't have to exaggerate it too much. And press upward. Let's see a few reps there, Andy. Now, a lot of people tell us that one of these is for upper pecs and one of these is for lower pecs. And don't worry as much about those things. In fact, the truth of the matter is the decline works your entire pec. The higher you go, the more you're dropping off parts of your pec. You're not necessarily adding in any more of the upper part. And of course, there's a bunch of front shoulder stuff going on here. He's really watching his low back position. And he's got his foot up on the squat plate, so he's not reaching out with his feet and causing increased lordosis in his lumbar spine. Feeling okay?
Great.
Yeah. Okay, 10 or so reps, depending on your goals, and you are set. This is the decline press, and the first thing we need to do is adjust the seat height. Now, take note of where you had it when you were doing the regular bench press. From there, each post that you have below that will be an option for the amount of decline you want to participate in. Some of those lower options will be fine for some of you, some of them will not, and I'll show you what to look for in just one second. I'm going to take you down just 2 pegs, Andy, which is kind of what we did when we came up for the incline. So have a seat right there. He's going to reach back. Again, I would highly suggest you use one of the outer 3 positions for this pulley, where the primary cable comes out. And to see if you're moving through the right plane or the right path, you need to pay close attention, especially while you're learning, to how this cable and handle are positioned relative to your arm. So you're going to watch, he's going to position or internally rotate his arm just enough to get that cable. See if he comes up, see that space that's in here? We don't want that. We're going to bring it down, okay? And not necessarily bring his elbow up, but we're going to bring his hand down. And that way, the resistance will be perfect for his shoulder and his torso length. So now we're going to do a lot of the same things we did before on other flies and other presses, which is pay attention to what's going on here. And position and stabilize first. What you do with your shoulder blades is up to you. You may want to really tuck them back there because you'll really feel what's going on up here better. Or you may have a goal where you're more worried about the motion and you want those shoulder blades to move. That is going to be up to you. So experiment a little bit. And experiment with lighter weights. So now, Andy, let's see, come to the center. That looks really nice. I bet you could even go a tad bit lower. Now for each one of these slight alterations in seat height, whether it be the incline or the decline, you could also do the fly exercise, the chest fly, for a decline and incline. But just remember to go ahead and move all the way to the outermost or widest pulley position for those decline fly and incline fly exercises. He's got his feet up, and he's got a nice lumbar position. You've got to worry about all this stuff. And that's why we continually talk about paying attention, learning it without weight. Because once you get weight and you're challenged, you're not going to think about how you're doing it. And how you're doing it is much more important than how much weight you're doing. Okay? Does it feel pretty good?
Feels great.
You know, while we're here, can you just, let me move this outward. And I want to see you do the fly. Stay right there. I got it. There you go. And see, that kind of looks like the crossover we were talking about. If you've ever seen that in a gym, this Xtreme has so many neat variations and so many things that sometimes you can't even find in a gym. Now we're going to take a look at the reverse fly, and this is a tough, tough exercise to do correctly. Watch. Andy's got the seat taken off of here. He's going to use the squat platform, and we've got the adjustable pulleys on the main crossbar here. We've got them at the innermost or narrowest position. Now, he's going to go ahead and take with a standard grip. Oh, you like the cuff grip? Good. Makes a lot of sense to me. So he chose the grip where you can grab the grip, but you can also have the cuff on the back of your hand, which makes grabbing it a little easier, a little less challenging. Now, watch what he does. He's going to come straight back to a little bit below shoulder height, and notice that he's not throwing his arms into rotation. I want you to do it one more time and show him what we don't want to do, okay? So come back and watch his elbows will drop and he's way up here. We really would like to stay away from that, especially with this arm being way out here closer to straight. It's a lot better on the shoulder joint. If you try your best to keep the elbow itself, the pointy part of your elbow, facing straight back, not the side of your elbow facing backwards. So let's see that again. Now what are we working? We can see a lot of things. Some people think it's just rear delts. It is a lot of what we call middle delt, all the scapular muscles, a tiny bit of lat, everything. Very nice. Let's take a look at the crossover reverse fly, because what we do is manipulate the resistance from the more traditional reverse fly. And Andy's going to face the machine with his toes up on the squat plate, and his heels will be on the floor once we get set up here. This time, his left hand will grab the opposite handle. His right hand, again, grabbing the opposite handle. He's again going to use the cuff grip, where the cuff goes behind his hand, and he can still grab a hold of the grip right there. Now, this is a great exercise because of the change in the application of resistance. You see, in the regular reverse fly, at the front position, the start position, we really don't have much resistance at all. But we still have the ability to generate strength there. But this is cool because when the resistance crosses over, it gives us some resistance at the very onset of the motion. So let's try it. Remember to keep your elbows leading the way. Okay, let's show it kind of incorrectly, Andy. When people throw their hands like that, that's not what we want. Pay attention to what your upper arm is doing. The forearm just follows the upper arm. A lot of people sit and think all the time about moving their hand, and that will cause you to do an improper performance, especially on this exercise. So watch everything that's working here. Middle delts, trapezius, posterior delts, a little tiny bit of lat, all the posterior side of the rotator cuff. This is a great exercise. This is called the rear delt row. And actually that's a little bit misleading. We could just call it the wide row because it works a lot more than just the rear delts. Watch this. We're going to cross over relative to the handles in the arm. So his left hand is going to have the opposite handle, and it's going to look like a row. His elbow is going to be bending, but it's very wide. His elbows are almost at the height of his shoulders. And this is a great exercise. In fact, relative to the reverse flies that we've discussed in this tape, this might be a better place to start because it's so much easier on the shoulder joint and really so much easier to perform correctly. Watch his forearm. It stays virtually in line with the cable. He's leading with his elbows, almost like he's punching somebody in the nose right here behind him. Don't get violent on me, Andy. And that is perfect. And like I said, it's much more than the rear delts, middle delts, all the trapezius, and all the deep scapular muscles. So there's a lot going on. This is a great, great exercise. This is the high rear delt row with the resistance crossed over at the very beginning. So what we're going to do is stand back, and Andy actually has his toes up against the front edge of the squat platform or the squat plate. And that works out just right for him. He's leaning back ever so slightly. Now it's going to be kind of a wide motion. Kind of wide, but still there's a little bit of moving from up to down on it. It's not straight back. It's not straight down. Kind of a diagonal. And it's a great application of resistance, as I've mentioned so many times. Anytime you can cross over here and have the resistance within the plane, you've got some initial starting resistance that's just wonderful. Now, it's more than just rear delts. There's middle delts. There's all these scapular muscles. There's even some rotator cuff. So there's a lot going on, but it's typically called the rear delt row. So Just stabilize your body. Don't lean forwards and backwards. Control everything. Let your shoulder blades move forwards and backwards with your arm. And you just can't do it any better than what Andy's doing right here. It looks perfect. This is the bent rear delt row. And it's actually kind of a wide row, but we're using the bottom pulleys and the lower direction of resistance, so we have to be in the bent over position. And because of that, you're going to have to make sure, any bent over position, you have to make sure you're able to control your posture and your spinal stabilization. So we're going to grab the handles. We've got the pulleys in the narrow position. And unlike using gravity, like a dumbbell, where you have to bend all the way over because gravity's pulling straight down, see, our cables are at a slight angle, and that's really nice because to make our body perpendicular to the cables, we don't have to bend so far. So you can see where Andy is right here, and what he's going to think about is taking the elbows straight out to the side. He's not pulling with his hands. In his head, he's not pulling with his hands. He's thinking about this elbow going right back even with his shoulders. And that looks perfect. Now we say it's a rear delt row, but it's a lot of things. It's rear delt, middle delt, down deep it's the rotator cuff, it's all these scapular muscles, and obviously it's all these spinal erectors in here. But this is a perfect form. Just make sure you're ready for it. This is the bent rear delt row with a slight variation. We're going to cross the cables, and it really makes a great exercise. So we're going to turn around and face the machine. We're going to use the bottom pulleys in the closest position, the closest adjustment. Now, but key to this is going to be keeping your hips bent, your knees bent, a pretty wide stance, and keeping your spine in a nice straight position. Andy's really good at that. Now the motion is going to be kind of like a wide movement where your elbows are going out to the side. You're not trying to fling your hand out there. You're just taking the elbow out to about shoulder height, shoulder level. And you can see, once again, that it's all these posterior shoulder muscles, middle delts, posterior delts, scapular muscles, posterior rotator cuff, and, of course, all these stabilizers. And because the resistance is crossed, he's got resistance at the bottom. When the resistance is in line with your arm, it's balanced. But because it's crossing over, he's got resistance from the very beginning. This is the seated rear delt row with the cables of the resistance crossed over, which is a great starting position. It loads the exercise from the very beginning of the arc of motion. So the key is going to be to sit up with great posture, and this time it's like a wide row. So the elbows are coming back at just below shoulder level. They don't need to be way up here even with the deltoids, but more like even with your armpit. See, that looks great. And really, it's more than rear delts. It's all the trapezius, deeper muscles in the scapular region, middle delts, rotator cuff even. So this is a great exercise. Strengthening the back of your shoulder is going to be critical to have strong shoulder integrity. This is the lateral shoulder raise, and this is a tough exercise to do right, so pay close attention. So I'm going to have Angela stand on the squat platform, and she's going to face outward. And we've got this shortest cable extension that's commonly used with the leg extension attachment. We're going to use it with this to get the handles up to her starting position, okay? Now, the adjustable pulleys down here at the bottom are all the way forward and out wide. Now, she's going to pay close attention to her posture, very important, keeping the spine really controlled. And it seems simple. She's going to lift her arms out to the side. Go ahead. But see, she does a good job. And here's what I see commonly in fitness centers. I see people kind of throw in their hands. They're thinking much more about lifting the weights or pulling on the handles instead of lifting the arm. You know, these muscles up here, they don't know you have hands. They're trying to lift this. So if you concentrate on lifting this part of your arm, right there, straight out to the side, and notice she's not way up in front, she's not way behind. She could actually vary it if she wanted to by moving slightly forward. Go ahead and go down. And kind of come up here a little bit forward from that. But I definitely wouldn't go any further backwards than straight in line with her body right here through her shoulders. This is one of my favorite variations for the lateral raise on the Xtreme. And the reason is because, well, not just because it's seated, but because the cuff is placed up near the elbow. Now, to do this, it's really best if you move the pulley, the bottom pulley, all the way to the back or to the closest position, and then just adjust your seat. And really, it can just be in kind of a middle position. It's not going to matter that much. But the big thing is that you're sitting up straight and taking these elbows straight out to the side. Now notice when Angela does this, she doesn't let her forearm fall behind, and she doesn't let it move ahead of the arm either. She's doing it perfectly, so pay close attention. Do it a couple more times for me. And the height is perfect too. Notice she's not trying to get a whole bunch of extra motion by doing some shrugging thing and impinging her shoulder. She is doing a nice smooth motion, and when shoulder needs to stop, when she feels it wanting to stop, she stops it. Don't throw it. Okay? Now the other thing is, you don't want to hold your shoulder blades still. So if you feel yourself shrugging, don't just smash them down, but you also don't want to do excessive shrugging either. That might tighten you up back here and really bother you. So just let your shoulder blades kind of float freely, a little bit up, a little bit down as your arms move. This is the front shoulder raise. And there's actually, for a simple exercise, a lot of things we can adjust in order to vary this. First of all, you're going to notice that we're using the lower pulleys, the ones that are associated with the squat attachment. And this is because we need a direction of resistance that is pulling downward. And we're even going to manipulate it by changing our pulley position on this bar right here. So Andy, I'm going to have you step back. Go ahead and grab that handle over here. Now Andy's pretty tall. And so what we did, we chose to use the cable, the short extension cable that you are supposed to use with your leg extension attachment. But of course, any of these attachments, any of these extension cables, if you find an appropriate place for them, go ahead and use them there. So right here, this allows him to have a great starting position. To adjust the slack in the cable, we've moved to the outer adjustment up here on this cross arm. And because we're using the narrow pulleys at the bottom, I think I'm going to actually have him, as he performs the motion, he's going to go a little bit wide as he goes up. And that allows him to not rub against his leg, and it's a little bit of variation, like I said. Now, front shoulder raise, what is that? He's working a lot of muscles. Anterior deltoids, middle deltoids. He's using a lot of stabilization from the rotator cuff. He's using his scapular muscles. Make sure that shoulder blade, make sure you allow it to move. Don't hold it still on anything where your arms are starting to go above shoulder level. How's that feel?
Feels good.
Now see, we can make a little change. If you'll move that side out, I'm going to move this one out. And now, instead of pulling outward at this angle, I'm going to have him pull inward at this angle. Isn't that great?
Feels good.
So there are a lot of variations, and this is why you need to take time to explore your machine and, again, really examine the instructions in this video. For the seated shoulder press, you're going to want to move the seat height to probably the top two pegs. So we've got it in the very top one. I think that's going to work fine for Andy. So go ahead and have a seat, Andy. Now this is critical. Your pulley adjustment up here needs to be in one of the outer two. Otherwise, you may run into proximity problems between the cable and your locking mechanism here. So one of the outer two is going to work great. And remember, the outer one's going to end up being actually a little bit harder. So if you choose that one, don't use the same weight that you use on the third one right here. So there's this side. Now, this shoulder press is a little bit of what we could call a front shoulder press. In other words, we're not going to go behind the body and stress out the shoulder like this. Not only is there no added benefit to doing that, you know, like a behind the neck barbell press, there's also a tremendous amount of risk associated with it. So it's going to be kind of like a really high, super high incline. Let's take a look at that. That looks nice, and you could probably even come back a little bit over your nose if you chose to, so you can play with that and experiment just a little bit. Now, on this exercise, do not even attempt to stabilize or manipulate your shoulder blades. Let them move. It is absolutely critical that the shoulder blades perform their normal shoulder blade motion, or scapulohumeral rhythm. It's one of those big scientific words. But the point is, that's how you get your arm up overhead, is for the shoulder blades to move. So unless you want to create an impingement, let them move freely up and freely down. Watch the low back. Perfect, Andy. We're going to take a look at shoulder internal rotation. And traditionally people call this rotator cuff internal rotation, but there's actually a few more muscles involved than just the rotator cuff, but it's definitely in there, okay? Now, the way you set yourself up on this is going to be kind of tricky. You need to be picky about it. Don't just grab a hold and start arm wrestling the machine. So Angela is facing directly to the side, and she's going to have her elbow bent to 90 degrees, and she's going to keep her upper arm in one place. That does not mean that you have to smash it real hard, because a lot of people do that like they're holding a piece of paper or something like that. You can just leave some space here between, but just don't let it move forward and backward or in and out. So you ready for this? Mm-hmm. She's keeping her scapula in a good posture, so she's not all rounded forward. And I hope you're paying attention to your posture every time you work out. And she's going to just act like this is a gate closing and a gate opening. And you can see that little arc that we've been talking about so many times on so many exercises. And this is a great place to start because most people don't have too much trouble with this short range. And if you find you're doing real well with it, go ahead and turn outward a little bit, kind of at an angle, not forward, not sideways. And that allows you to open up this shoulder position and then go through the motion again, kind of closing that gate, so to speak. Now, do not attempt to turn this into a powerlifting exercise. If you really want to affect the rotator cuff the most, these little stabilizers respond best to relatively light, controlled loads. You can even find a great way to do it by doing isometrics. So she could pull to this position and hold for a 6 count. She could come in here and hold for a 6 count, and they found tremendous benefit in doing that, specifically for the stabilizer muscles like the rotator cuff. This is shoulder external rotation, and a lot of people call it rotator cuff external rotation, but there's a lot of muscles that participate in this thing besides just the rotator cuff. But we do need to be really picky. So let's take a look at this, Angela. And again, on each one of these rotator cuff type things, you're going to want to do both sides. But we're going to start with just this one right here, and she's going to put her hand through the cuff and still be able to grab the grip, and that helps because as she pulls outward, she doesn't have to use her grip entirely. This guy right here is going to help her hold it. So, now, she is going to start totally facing the side, maybe even slightly facing towards the back part of the machine. Why? Because this is typically a pretty weak motion. And remember, as the power rods flex, they get harder. So, number one, you're probably going to use less weight, fewer power rods than you did on the internal rotation. Number two, we're going to start in this position we talked about. And if it's easy, then feel free to make small little adjustments to change the range, and that will simultaneously change the resistance. Did you feel that?
Oh yeah, it's tougher already.
Just that little tiny change there. That's why I keep saying over and over, you've got to be picky. You've got to really pay attention to what you're doing. So many people are just all over the place. And that's how sometimes resistance training gets a bad name. It's not the resistance training, it's the lack of care and concern they put into it, okay? So again, we would go to the other side, which we don't really need to do right now, but just do it a couple more times because I want to review something here. We want to keep this upper arm from moving. It's not going to go forwards and backwards. We're just not going to go in and out, and we're going to keep the elbow at 90 degrees. Other than that, you're ready to go. This is shoulder extension, and we're going to see the whole arm move at the shoulder as well as a little bit of shoulder blade motion. So you're going to face the machine, and you can start out for the initial version of this with your toes or the ball of your foot up on the squat plate and your heels down on the floor, assuming that's comfortable for your ankle and the arch of your foot. If it's not, by all means, go ahead and stand right up on the squat plate, okay? Now, the first thing we're going to do is move the pulleys to the narrow position. So they're all the way in and locked. And you're going to notice how good Angela is at keeping her spinal position. Now it's easy to do at this upright starting posture, and that's why I want you to start this exercise here, and we'll progress to the tougher positions, okay? And all you're doing is concentrating on bringing the arms beside your body with a squeezing motion of all of this, even between here. And if you're doing it right, you will feel so much going on, can't you?
Yeah.
and then slowly forward and right back here, squeezing everything. Make sure on every repetition, you take time to think through it. Make the things happen you want to happen. Now, if you're getting pretty good at stabilizing this posture, we're gonna create a variation. We're gonna change the shoulder range through which we're working. So she's gonna do a little bit of a lunge or a split stance, kind of split front to back, and she bent over at the hips. Notice this is still nice and straight. She didn't just slouch forward. And you know what it's kind of like? It's almost if you could imagine that you're swimming and you're pulling yourself through the water and squeezing everything behind you. Does that help a little bit? Shoulder blades are moving every time. When her arms go forward, the shoulder blades go forward. And I'm noticing that as Angela does this, she's still got some travel in the cables. So we're going to manipulate it one more time by moving this foot back and bending over a little more. And now try it one more time. Perfect. So there were 3 variations that altered the range through which we're resisting shoulder extension. The shoulder shrug can actually be performed more efficiently and effectively on the Bowflex Xtreme than it even can with dumbbells or a barbell. And I know you think I'm crazy, but let me show you why. I'm going to have Andy step right up in here. Now, I'm not sure it really matters which way you face, but I'm going to have him face this way so you can see what's going on in the musculature. Now, the pulleys, the bottom pulleys, we've got them really wide, and that's part of what's going to create this advantage we were talking about. So Andy's got that one. Now, when you're using a heavy dumbbell, even a light dumbbell, the resistance is pulling right here by your leg. But if you watch him shrug, the shoulder blades not only go up, they actually turn a little bit because the muscles are attached out here and they're pulling towards the center. So you get this rotation. Well, because of that, it's really nice for your arms to be away from your side and for the resistance to be pulling outward a little bit because that really frees up the motion in the shoulder blade because your arm's not just being smushed in against your side. So if you understand all that, that's really, really a very effective exercise. Now here's another thing that people do that can really blow this thing. A lot of times they think about taking their shoulders to their ears. And if you can see that at all, if he takes it to his ears, he has to actually move his shoulders forward. What we really would like to do is take the shoulders towards the back of the head because that is where these muscles attach. And if you watch him do it forward for a second and watch. Not much. Now do it to the back of the head. Look at that. So pay close attention to that. Maybe you'll look just like Andy. This is scapula protraction. And now you've got to watch carefully because it's a pretty small overall motion, but you've also got to be very, very picky because the smaller the motion, the easier it is to screw up. So have a seat here, Andy. And we've got the seat in the regular old bench press position. So, keep making note of that because that's going to be really important for a lot of exercises. And I've got the adjustable pulley in the narrowest position. And it really works the best for this particular movement. So go ahead and grab over there, Andy. And he's going to go all the way to the front with his hands about shoulder width. We're not going to touch him necessarily. He's going to maintain that, and that's the key. We don't want to see his elbow move at all. His arm will stay pretty straight, okay? All of the motion will occur right back in here where his shoulder blades are. So watch carefully as he protracts or slides them forward away from the bench, and then eccentrically lets the machine pull him back, and that'll look like his chest is way up again, like in some of the other exercises. And then the movement again is straight forward. And really this is more of a rehab exercise or a scapular stabilization exercise. Scapular depression can be vital not only for posture, but even for helping to relieve some of the tension that a lot of people get up here, up in the neck. Now what Andy has done is put the handles on the lat tower cable and then brought them down to his sides. And he's going to hold them at his sides, and actually the only movement you're going to see right here in the scapula. Now watch as he eccentrically lets him come up. Now his muscles are so clear to see that it looks like he's shrugging upward, but actually the resistance is the opposite. So it's the lower traps, it's the lats, it's all these guys down here. When he comes up, these are actually soft a little bit. They're not working, even though it might appear on camera that it looks, that they're doing a lot of activity. But it's all down here, and these are just so important for posture. Scapular retraction, or kind of a backwards shrug, is absolutely critical for you to learn. maybe even before you do any of your bent over rows or anything like that, because that motion is an integral part of your rows and other exercises. Now watch, it's a short motion. The arms are going to stay straight. You're not pulling with your elbow muscles, biceps and those guys. Watch Andy, he's keeping his arms straight and he's bringing his shoulder blades together, not up, but together in the back. And then watch this part, as he controls them forward, go forward for me slowly. He didn't let go of his spinal position. A lot of times people, as they go forward, will also do this. And we're going to ask that you not do that, at least not right now. Work real hard on controlling this just by itself. Keep your chest up, and then as you pull back, and then as you take your shoulder blades forward, your chest may drop just a little bit. This is the standing shoulder pullover using the lat bar. So we've obviously used the top pulleys and the upward direction of resistance, and I'm having Angela grab a tiny bit wider than her shoulder width. I think that works really well for most people. Narrower than shoulder width, your arms actually get in your way as you try to come through the motion. So, the first thing, notice she's standing up on the platform, which helps with her range of motion relative to the cable travel. And something else she's going to do is let's keep your arms a little straighter. So we're trying to keep these pretty straight. And I want to see some shoulder blade motion. So as we come up, the shoulders are going to feel comfortable just letting them move. And then as we bring the arms down by your side, yeah, squeeze those. There you go. Look at that. Very, very nice. You feel all that? Yeah. So a couple more. Let's look at that. Because every time, remember, that we took the arms up over the head or above the shoulders, boy, those shoulder blades need to move. Down when the arms come down, up when the arms go up. This is the standing shoulder pullover. You're going to perform it from the lat tower pulleys with the single grips on. Now you're going to have to take a look and experiment with your position. Some people may want to be on the squat platform. Others might be able to stand on the floor. You just need to experiment like I said. So the first thing Andy's going to do is stand up nice and straight and pull his arms right beside his body. And watch something very important here. He doesn't let his shoulder blades round off like that. As he comes down, he's keeping these muscles tight at the bottom, and as his arms go up, he's letting them go at the top. So the scapula must move with the arms. This is involving a lot of muscles. Lats, a little bit of pec when you're at the top of the motion, a little bit of rear delt, especially at the bottom of the motion. So there are a lot of things going on, all the scapular muscles as well. We're going to do a variation on the lat pull down, but still using the bar. And all we're going to do is bring our hands in a little narrower. And there's a couple options that we can take a look at here. First of all, this is kind of a supinated grip where your palms are facing you. And you're going to be a little narrower than before when we did this big wide thing on the bar. So you're going to be about shoulder width, and you're going to bring your elbows right by your side. Now watch as Andy does this. Key thing is, of course, again, pulling to the front, which is about all you can do with this specific grip, but also making these shoulder blade muscles initiate and move with the arms. And then as the arms go up, they have to let go and control themselves upward also. The shoulder blades must move up and down with the arms. If you just yank with the arms and don't think about your shoulder blades, you're missing out on so much. Now another variation we could do is kind of a reverse grip. Go ahead and turn them over, Andy. And a lot of people are uncomfortable with one of these or maybe both of these just because trying to grab a hold of the bar and twist their hands all the way. A lot of people love them. So you need to see, just if it bothers you a little bit, gosh, we got plenty of things to do. So, but give it a try. Give it a try. Now as he comes down, his elbows are a little wider than they were in that one where his palms were facing him. But he's still got the shoulder blade stuff going on that's so important. This is the wide lat pull down. And there's a couple things I want you to really look at here. And the first is your seat adjustment. Because if the seat's too high, you're not going to be able to reach all the way up on the eccentric because the cables will hit the pulleys. So you're going to have to look at that first. You might have to go lower if you're really long through here plus here. Okay? Now one of the things we did to take up some of the slack was move the adjustable pulley here to the outer position. That just took up some of the slack in the cable. And so we were able to leave it on a pretty high seat setting. Worked out fine. Now, grip on the bar. So many times you'll see people grab way out here because, well, it looks like a handle. To tell you the truth, you got to be a pretty wide person to need to grab way out here. Let go for 1 second, Andy. What I would look at, if he comes to this position, when his hands are just about over his elbows, that's as wide as he ever needs to be. There is no reason to be wider than that. It actually limits your range dramatically to go wider and makes it harder to do the exercise right. So it could be over the elbow or very slightly inward. You don't want to come way in here because that won't work well either. So for him, that's just about grabbing right here where those tabs are welded on. That's going to work out great. Now, we are always doing a front pull down. Pull down behind the neck is not only a little bit less effective, it has some pretty dramatic risk on the shoulder joint. Okay, so when you combine those things, less benefit, more risk, makes no sense. All the muscles you're trying to work, you're going to affect perfectly with a front pull down. Now, he's not going to sway back and forth with his trunk. He's going to maintain his position here, leaning back very slightly. And watch when he does this. He's going to move his shoulder blades down as he's moving his arms. Sometimes people will have a tendency to bring their arms down, but their shoulder blades stay up by their ears. So watch Andy, and he's bringing them all down together. So at the bottom, he's bringing his arms into his sides and his shoulder blades towards his waistline down there. Now, a lot of people also determine their range by looking at whether the bar touches the chest. And to tell you the truth, that is insignificant. The range is determined by whether your arm can come close to your side or not. The bar doesn't matter. If it touches your chest, great. If it doesn't, but you're doing the best you can to get your arm into your side, don't worry about it. Notice as he goes back up, the shoulder blades also go back up. You're not restricting them in any way. You're making sure that they float smoothly with his arms up and down. Doing the pull down with the handles and being able to move your arms separately and change things provides so much variation. Take a look. First of all, we could do the narrow grip where Andy's coming down with his elbows basically at the width of the pulleys, and he's kind of in that neutral or hammer grip relative to his forearm. We didn't have to change the handle to do that. Notice we still got the shoulder blade depression as he brings his arm down and the elevation as his arms go up. And then he could also go wider like he did with the bar. So it's very similar, only when he comes up to the top, he gets to come more towards the center. So it actually increases his range of motion over what the bar would provide. He could go back to the narrow one and turn his palms towards him. And there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't change the palm position, the forearm position, as you go. So you could reach up this way, and as he comes down, twist him. These handles are really great because they allow so much variation. Now, another thing we can always do is cross the handles when we're using these separate handles or grips. And it's just key that when you cross them, they're crossed within the plane of motion. Now, Andy's going to be doing like a wide pull down, so the plane is in essence here, and the crossing of the resistance is staying consistent within that plane. So this works out great because at the top he's even got more resistance where he would normally just kind of be resting, because when he gets up there, there he goes, it's still pulling over to the sides. That's a wonderful application of resistance. And I'll tell you what, you can't do that. You can't do that in a gym. You really can't, because you pretty much have just got one cable on your pull down machine. So if the cables touch while you're doing this, or you hear something where these little balls are hitting as you're doing the exercise, don't worry about it. It'll be okay. But keep concentrating on not moving your spine or your trunk. Don't flop forwards and backwards. And bring the shoulder blades down, initiate here, squeeze into your side, and control it all the way up. Don't relax, keep the tension. This is the bent over row. And it's a really tricky exercise because you've got to pay so much attention to what your back is doing, keeping your posture. And I want to even call it an advanced exercise because you need to make sure that you can control all of this, the trunk, the posture, before you do it. Because when you bend over, it's a lot harder to keep your spine where you want it. All right? So when you're ready, when you're able to do that, control your spine. We've looked at his position, and it works best for him with the ball of his foot up on the squat plate and his heels on the floor. You might try it and see what you think. We've got the narrowest or closest positions on the bottom pulley, and he's going to keep this really nice. And here's a neat thing. See, if you're using a free weight, barbell or dumbbell, you have to bend all the way over, parallel to the ground. which is the hardest position to maintain, but you have to do that because gravity's pulling straight down. With this cable direction, it's pulling forward a little bit. So in order to be perpendicular to his trunk, he doesn't have to bend all the way over. So that's really nice. It makes it easier to stabilize. Now, on a row, I want you to think about doing two things at the same time. First will be bringing your shoulder blades together while you bring your elbows near and even a little bit behind your side. Now, it can be out from your side a little bit. It could be really close if you feel comfortable that way. But the main thing is we're not wanting to move out here to a wide position like a rear delt type of thing. So you can see what he's doing. Every time he goes backwards, the shoulder blades pinch in retraction. Every time he goes forward, and watch this again, when he goes forward, the shoulder blades come apart, but he doesn't lose his spinal position. He's so good at letting these come apart, but maintaining this, and that's where there's going to be kind of a tough thing for you as you're learning this exercise. The seated row is probably the rowing exercise that you should start with. Because you're in the seated position and the spine is virtually balanced over your hips, it's a lot easier to stabilize. And then you can later work up to some of those bent over exercises that are on the video. So the first thing we're going to do is sit up nice and straight. There's a bend in the knee. Make sure there's a bend in the knee and the heels are against the squat plate. All right? We've got in the middle cable position or pulley position down here on the squat pulleys. Now, watch carefully. Did you see the scapular retraction occur as part of the exercise? What happens sometimes, Andy, you're so good at it, I don't even know if you can do it wrong. Sometimes people leave their shoulder blades forward and just bring their arms back. Okay, so what we really want to see is pinching here as we bring the arms back and bring them all the way back as far as you can. Don't throw your body forwards and backwards. That's real important. That's somewhere between a waste of time and actually pretty risky. Now, you may over time work up to some controlled forward and backward motion in your hip and spine, but that's later, way down the road. Now, of course, Andy, he could vary things by doing one arm at a time. He could do it simultaneously while one's going forward, the other goes backwards. I love that. Getting some nice rotation in the spine there. That's a great one. But the key is keep that spinal alignment, keep that chest up, that rib cage. This is the standing low back extension. And like so many exercises, your performance and your technique is going to be critical. And again, it's because we want to eliminate as much risk as possible and get as much benefit as we can. So here's how we're going to start. Andy's going to back into this thing. So his bottom's going to be against the pad. And we're going to slip the cuff away from the grip. And it's actually going to come up to his elbow. And that way he doesn't really have to hang on to it. And you could hang on to it just like a regular handle type thing. But this is nice because you don't have to worry about whether your grip gets tired. And he's crossing his arms, which helps to further stabilize them and hold them from the weight pulling down on them. And we're going to go ahead and come up to the top. And here's the part you really need to pay attention to. So watch. Andy is going to think about keeping his rib cage up. Now see, so many times people will tell you, straighten your back, straighten up. But you know, you can't see your back. You can't tell what your back is doing. But if you lift your rib cage, your back does what it's supposed to do. And you can see that to some degree. So he's perfect right there. And this, starting out, is going to be actually a hip motion. And the entire point of it is for you to learn to keep your spine in the same position that you start in. So watch as he goes forward. And he didn't change at all from top to bottom. And I really like the Bowflex on this because as he goes down, there's less bend in the rod. And that means we're actually taking some resistance off the exercise when he's moving to the toughest, kind of almost scariest position. Okay, so that's a neat factor in the extreme here. Now, if you practice this, there are a couple variations. When you get good at this, that you might want to try very carefully with obviously changing the weight from what you're doing here because it's entirely different. Now, we're going to go to this bottom position that we said was so tough and watch. It's a small motion. Andy's going to let his spine curl inward and then straighten outward. So we're actually, instead of keeping the spine straight as we're moving at the hip, this time we're doing a little bit of this stuff, okay? Pretty good. Now I'll tell you another variation that I've seen a lot of people do that's kind of neat is to just do the exact same motions, but just put the load on one side. And what that does, it not only requires you to use these muscles on the back, it's pulling you to one side, which makes you use the muscles on this side also. And then of course you want to complement that by doing the other side, you know, putting the resistance over there, if you choose to do that variation as part of progression, not the first day. All of the upper arm exercises we're ever going to do, whether it's for your curlers or your straighteners, you're going to make sure that where you decide to put your upper arm is where it stays the whole time. So watch how well Andy does this. He's got palms facing towards the ground right now, and he's going to straighten all the way out. Remember that nice arc we talked about? Kind of like a quarter of a circle or maybe a little more than that. And all the way straight without moving the upper arm forwards or backwards. Don't have to smash it into the side. That's not going to help forwards and backwards stability or stabilization. Now a great variation on this push down is to change to more of the hammer grip, where the grip itself, the handle, is in line with the cable. And it's really nice too to have this webbing because you can put the hand through it and you don't have to use all your effort squeezing this thing. All the same things hold true. Keep the upper arm stable. We could even vary the shoulder position a little bit if Andy wanted to hold his arms a little bit forward and keep them there the whole time. That looks real nice. Here's something else you can do on the Xtreme. A rope extension. You know the push downs with the rope? Watch this. We're going to use the same hammer grip. We're just going to cross them. So he's going to start with his hands about in the center, and he's going to take them outward. So he's moving kind of in a V instead of straight back like he was before. This is a great, great variation. This is the triceps push down using the lat bar. Now your grip is going to be something you need to take a look at because a lot of people, you know, in the gym they use those really short, narrow push down bars, and because of that they end up using a lot of other muscles. If you want that, fine, but most people are trying to do the triceps when they're working the triceps. So choose a shoulder width grip, kind of like Angela has right here. It'll work a lot better for you. So she's standing up nice and straight, and she's just going to bring her arm to her side and then make that nice arcing motion. And when she gets all the way down, she's really going to squeeze. She's keeping her wrists straight. It's not bending as she does the motion. Also, if you find that you can't get to the bottom and straighten your arm out all the way because you're hitting the pulley up here, you can do simple things. I'll get one more snap hook and put it in here, and that'll buy you about 3 inches, and chances are that'll take care of it. Very simple fix. This is the tricep extension, and we have multiple options to vary this exercise even without changing too much right here. So, Angela, go ahead and have a seat. This is the regular bench press position. And the pulleys are in the narrowest adjustment, okay? And there's one handle. Can you reach the other? Yeah. Now, we're going to start right here and make sure you look at her arm width or elbow width, you might say. She's not way out here. Her elbows are right in front of her shoulders, so they're shoulder width. And she's going to face the palms forward and very slowly, taking great care to not move the upper arm. And see, that's the thing you're going to do if you've got too much weight. You're going to cheat, so to speak. Now, she's going to make this nice arcing motion that goes in a smooth, kind of a quarter of a circle to right there, and she's got a perfectly straight arm, and then she controls it in an arc, kind of up and backwards to right there. And she's going a little bit further than 90 degrees with the elbow bend, and that's fine. The machine's allowing her to do that and keep resistance. So let's do a few of those, and watch how well she stabilizes. And as you get tired, you might lose some of that ability to stabilize, so you need to pay attention to that. It might be time to stop because you don't want to get hurt trying to work your triceps. Feel pretty good?
Yeah, it feels great.
Now, there's something you can do here for a slight variation. We can move the upper arm up a little bit. So we're changing the angle, opening it up, if you will. And now we're going to go through the same motion. And you've seen this in the gym. A lot of people call it a French press, French tricep extension. I don't know why they call it that, but that's what they do. But you want to pay attention to the similar things. Now, if either one of these bothers your shoulder, especially the one where you're going up higher, a lot of people can't do that. That's okay. We've got other options for you. This is the hammer tricep extension. And the biggest thing you're going to notice about it is that the hand is in, well, what they call a hammer position, or in neutral, meaning it's not facing this way, it's not facing this way, kind of the same wrist position you'd use if you were grabbing a hammer. One of the things you might want to do on any of your tricep exercises is manipulate the seat height. If it's too low, you may find that the handle and the snap hook comes back and hits right here on the pulley. So we could raise it up just a little bit to ensure that that doesn't happen. Have a seat there, Andy. Pulleys are in the narrowest, closest position, locked in place. And go ahead and reach over there and grab that one. I'll get this one for you to save time. Now watch how he does this. He grabs the grip. We've slipped these handles, the solid handle, on the webbing a little bit so that the webbing goes around the outside of his hand, but he can still grab that nice firm grip. And pay attention to your shoulder discomfort or how easy you can create positions here, because he's going to come up pretty high. There you go. And he's going to make this nice arc. Now, one of the things I see people doing is trying to push in a straight line. And when you push in a straight line, you have to move your upper arm. So the thing to think about is creating this kind of quarter of a circle that goes forward and then downward, and really tightening the tricep right there at the end. Don't just go fast and do stuff like this, because you're kind of wasting time and not getting everything out of it you could. So watch the control he uses. Start with tension here, go all the way and squeeze it for a split second, go back in this nice arc. The upper arm should not move a bit if you're doing it correctly. This is the cross triceps extension, and cross refers to what the cable is going to do relative to your body. So Andy, have a seat here, and we've again chosen the basic bench press type of adjustment where the cable itself is about at armpit height on him. And he's going to take, notice we're on this side, we've got the second from the narrowest pulley position, second from the narrowest, and we're going to use a neat grip adjustment. Because he's pushing outward, we're going to use the cuff around the back of his hand, which will really help him hold on with greater ease. And he's going to keep his elbow up a little bit, and he can put his hand under here as kind of a reference point. Don't push against your hand. This is not for cheating with, it's for a reference point, so you can tell if it's moving up and down. And then the nice things we like to do every time, make this big arc back around the front of your body, and then think about straightening your arm in a quarter of a circle, and when you get out there, really tighten that tricep. Don't go so fast that you just throw it like that, because you're going to waste a lot of time and a lot of effort. This is the triceps kickback, and it's much better on the Bowflex than the traditional version that's done with a dumbbell, and we'll show you why. Now, a lot of people like to split their feet front to back, almost like a slight lunge, because it helps them maintain the spinal position that we prefer. And Angela's grabbing the handle, and in this version, her palm is facing backwards. So, notice how great she is at keeping her upper arm from moving. And that is going to really determine your success in this thing. She goes all the way straight, and she really tightens it. Folks, I've said this a million times, if I've said it once in my life, that is critical to you getting the results you want and feeling what you want to feel. You feel okay to you?
Yeah, it's great.
Now, what is this going to do? Does it help you lose fat from this area? There's no resistance exercise that helps you lose fat from any specific area. You lose fat from your total body at one time. So, is it important to work this muscle? Absolutely, because that creates the firmness in this area that we do want. This is the hammer position triceps kickback. So it's going to look real similar to a traditional triceps kickback, only we're going to modify the grip. And that allows us to have our hand in neutral, or what we call hammer position, rather than being this way or this way. So step right up here, Andy, and kind of do a lunge, kind of a positioning, and bend over and use the pad here to stabilize. Keep all of this in great alignment, and now we're going to keep this very still right here, the upper arm. And he's going to make this nice, smooth arc. You really need to think about moving your hand in a circle instead of just pushing in a straight line. And he's really good at that. He's tightening at the end, which makes it very effective. Now, the reason that this is so much better than just using a traditional dumbbell for a kickback is because a dumbbell is hard here, but in this position, the dumbbell is virtually balanced below your elbow. It's not requiring any muscular action. In fact, if you go this far with the dumbbell, you're using your biceps and its friends to do the exercise. So a dumbbell is really inappropriate for this movement. The Bowflex, however, Bowflex Xtreme, it's perfect. Now there's a pretty cool version of a dip, a resisted dip that we can do on the Xtreme, and it's got some nice features that may even make it better than a dip you do with your body weight in the gym. So take a look. We've got the elbows kind of behind the body, not out real wide, and we're of course using the lat tower with the individual handles attached to the cables. And I'm going to have Angela push straight down beside her leg first. We'll see what that looks like. So she's kind of just pushing straight down like this. The thing that you've got to take great care in watching for is how far up you let your arms come. In other words, how far into extension your shoulders go. Now, a lot of people doing dips in the gym, you just see them do an unbelievable range of motion. And in all honesty, for whatever they think they're getting out of it, they are tearing their shoulders up. You have got, the normal human body has got about 40 to 50 degrees of extension available. That's it. So I have no doubt that you can work up to more and more range and get your elbows clear up by your ears. But that's not better. That's actually worse because you've torn things up. So control it like she is. Go about as high as she is, which is about 40 or 50 degrees. Back, go ahead. Yep. And we're going to try a little different variation now. I'm going to have her push slightly forward, almost like she's ending up near the front of her thigh this time instead of near the back. So you can even play with it here, and you can't do those things on a regular dip with your body weight. Now, another nice thing about the resistance on the Xtreme, in this position that a lot of people get in trouble in, we've actually got less resistance because there's less bend in the rod. And as we go down where we're really strong, more bend in the rod, more resistance. This is the biceps curl, and that's really a little bit of a misleading name because we're not just working biceps, although that's what everybody wants to see. We're working a lot of other muscles in here like the brachialis, brachioradialis, and of course all the stabilizers. But let's take a look at this curl. It's going to look a lot like a barbell or dumbbell curl, and the resistance is going to be set up from below on the squat platform, and we're going to move the pulleys to the wide position. That really works best when you look at where the hand goes when it turns to the front. This is called the carrying angle. And when we turn the hand to the front to grab the handle, notice it's wider than my shoulders. Okay, so step right back here. We're going to face outward. And there's a reason we're doing that. That way the cable is actually coming very slightly from behind him. So he has a little load from the very beginning. With a dumbbell, you're just balanced here. You're not doing any work here. But because the angle of the cable in the Bowflex, we're going to get more work going on. Now the key, don't move your body. Don't move your upper arm. That's what everybody loves to do. They love to take their elbows backwards and their elbows forwards. And that doesn't help a thing. In fact, it actually reduces the stress on the muscles that you're trying to work. So do it the hard way, which is keeping your upper arm still and creating that arc forward, upward, and inward. And when you're at the top, really squeeze all those muscles. Control it back down in an arc. So it goes down and then back towards your legs, forward, up, and in. Think about that arc. And now it's more than a quarter of a circle. It's almost a half a circle. But think about it. Try to keep your upper arm stable. And you don't have to smash your arms to your side to keep it stable. In fact, I think that's distracting. Just don't let them move front to back. Now, one thing, of course, he can do is alternate. And he can even simultaneously alternate, which means instead of letting one sit still, one can be going up while the other goes down. And actually, you can do that on every single exercise we've looked at so far, even the presses, where you can alternate, or you could just do one. Now, this is a concentration curl, and typically, you'll see that people do that in a gym with a dumbbell. But the direction of resistance that's available on the Xtreme is actually much more effective, and I'll show you why. Typically, we go ahead and bend over, and this is kind of just a traditional name, concentration curl. You want to keep the spine in a decent position here, and what very many people do is rest the elbow on the knee, and that's fine to start with. So the reason this is so effective is because from the very beginning, instead of gravity pulling straight down, being balanced through your arm, you've got a cable pulling backwards a little bit. So from the very beginning, you have to work. And then again, we're going to come up and really contract at the top. Very, very important. Now, to make it a little tougher, and you've got to try this, don't rest the elbow on the knee. Hold it right there. Don't let it move backwards. See, that's what a lot of people do, is the elbow moves backwards, and they're taking some of the stress away from the ones they really want to work. So keep your elbow and your upper arm vertical and complete the motion without resting against anything once you get a little better at stabilizing. And then of course you've got to turn around and do the other side so that we're not lopsided. This is the reverse curl. Now, you could face inward or you could face outward, but I really like having Andy face outward because the resistance is pulling slightly backwards at the start, and that gives him a little resistance from the beginning that we might not have if the resistance was going straight down. But you can do it either way. Now you're going to notice that he's using the cuff grip, where the cuff is going over the back of his hand and he's still grabbing the handle grip itself with his fingers, and that really helps him when his palm is facing downward. It makes it easier to maintain his grip. Now as he comes up, the key is always on a curl. To keep your upper arm stable, don't let it move forwards or backwards. And that's pretty hard to do if you're not paying real close attention. You don't have to smash them into your side to do that. Just watch, maybe have a mirror from the side, and pay close attention so that you're not doing this and this. Andy, as you can see, is doing it perfectly, moving his hand through a perfect arc. For barbell curls, there's something you need to look at first before just grabbing the bar. And that is this thing called a carrying angle. Now, what all that means is when you're standing with your palms facing your side, your hands are right below your shoulders. But when you turn them to the front, there's this natural angle in your arm, and you have to allow for that when you grab the bar. If you don't, you'll end up with almost a shin splint type of sensation in your forearm. And that's very important to pay attention to. So that's why we've got Andy's hands a little bit wider. I just looked at him the same way that you're looking at me right now and put the bar in his hands in that exact position. And now the key is going to be like any other curl or tricep exercise, where you want to keep the upper arm where it starts is where it stays type thing. Okay? So you can face inward, you can face outward. You don't have to smash your arms to your sides, but don't let it move forwards and backwards, because a lot of people, they start like this and they end up like that. And that's going to take away from the effectiveness of the exercise. This is the reverse barbell curl, where you're going to grab the bar with the palms facing downward, or in the starting position toward your leg. Now, this is going to be a shoulder width grip, or maybe a tad bit wider. That'll work out just fine. And you can face forward like Andy is, so you can see it, or you can face the machine. It'll work out either way. Now, the first thing is, of course, to maintain your posture and control all of this spinal stuff. And then keep your upper arm from moving. You don't have to smash it into your sides, but don't let it go forwards and backwards. Let's see one, Andy. See, he's really good at controlling that and not letting that arm move forwards and backwards. And because of that, he's getting the most effectiveness he can from this exercise. Now, this change in position or grip still utilizes all the same muscle as a regular barbell curl, but it just slightly alters the proportions of their participation. This is the seated arm curl or seated biceps curl. But remember, there's a lot of other muscles working here too. Now you're going to need to experiment a little bit. You might like to sit all the way back against the back pad, but you might find that due to your trunk length and arm length that you can't keep resistance all the way down. You end up with slack. If that's the case, then modify it a little bit. We did a neat thing here that looks great for Angela. She's sitting on the front edge of the seat with her feet flat on the floor, and this gives her perfect resistance throughout the entire range. So watch. The cable is in the wide pulley position. Did you notice how she didn't let her upper arm move at all? That is perfect performance. So she didn't let him go backwards here and forwards here and waste her time and waste her effort. She's really concentrating, and she's not necessarily smashing him. That doesn't help to smash him into your side. Just think about the forward backwards and keep that steady. Now she's maintaining this palms forward grip, which is great, but you can also vary that too with the different grips. So she's going all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom, but watch at the top. When she gets up there, she's really squeezing. She's not wasting her time. She's not throwing it. She's taking time up there to do some work. This is a great exercise. Now, a variation on the seated biceps curl is what we'll call the hammer curl because of a slight change in the wrist and radial ulnar position. All that means is we're going to act like we're grabbing a hammer, right? So we're going to adjust the handles to where the grip is in line with the cable, and then everything else is the same. Just nice curls, holding the upper arm still, and you may have to adjust the weight on this because typically people are a little bit weaker on this than they are on the more traditional biceps curl. Wrist extension is a nice forearm exercise because the things that move your wrist are all these muscles up through here. So you could really do it either way. You could face in or out. I'm going to have Angela face outward so you can see more about what's going on. And we've got the short cable extensions from the leg extension attachment. We're going to use those. And you're going to start with your palms down. And go ahead and bend the elbow. You can just put that by your side. Now, it's kind of tricky because you get to stabilize with some of the same muscles that you're working up here, and that's a really nice thing. And it's a short little motion. You're letting the resistance pull you down without changing your forearm position, and then coming into extension without, again, moving at the elbow or changing forearm position. So you're not doing all this stuff. It's just right in the wrist. This is the wrist curl or wrist flexion. And the key to this is going to be keeping your forearm or your elbow position in one place. So you could really do this facing inward or outward. I want you to see what's going on, so I'm going to have Angela face this way. Now on this exercise, the palm is going to face upward. So you're going to grasp with just a traditional grip, and you're not going to move the upper arm or the forearm, even though it's forearm muscles that are moving the wrist. So she's going to let the resistance pull her into extension, control it. Don't let it bend backwards to an uncomfortable position. Pay attention to where you're going, even though it's short, and then pull concentrically into the wrist curl or the wrist flexion. And again, you're going to have a tendency to want to see a lot of motion. So you're going to want to move all this stuff. But if you watch, and she's doing it perfectly, this is all it is. This is the way to make it the most effective. Andy's going to do a push down, triceps push down on the left, and he's going to do what we call a biceps curl or arm flexion on the right. And the thing that he's having to work on here, while this is pulling him down, this is pulling him up, so all these muscles are working in a really unique fashion. It's really cool. And of course, after he finishes his reps in this configuration, we're going to want to swap him around so that we have the opposite resistance on each side.
This is the seated resisted abdominal crunch. And before we look at the equipment or the exercise, let's talk about resistance for abdominals. Because so many times you'll hear people say, well, you need to do 100 repetitions of crunches for your abdominals, as if that was going to melt the fat away. Spot reduction does not occur, right? So you can't just do exercises for this area and have the fat go away. The whole purpose of the exercise is to build the muscle. Now, muscle around here does not build out big like this. The lines that you see on these people that are very lean, that is the bulging of the muscle. So you need to develop these little muscles just like you develop a bicep or a quadricep in your legs, and you do that with resistance, whether it's 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 repetitions to fatigue, just like you would with any other part of your body. So that's the first thing. Resistance is important. Next, I want to show you the machine and how the SE is very different from other Bowflexes. We can take this pulley off of the main frame right here and put it up on the specific little attachment just for the abdominal crunch. And we'll tighten this down so it's nice and secure. You'll notice we cheated a little bit. We left the power rods on the hook when we moved the pulleys. You might want to leave those off, adjust the pulleys, then set the resistance for what you think you should use. Next, this other great feature for the SE, the harness for ab crunches that you'll see just attaches to the snap hooks via these D-rings on the harness, and it's going to create a real comfortable way to do the crunch by grabbing onto the resistance. Now, the next thing I want to do, and I think this is specific to Angela, you'll have to see what works best for you. I'm going to adjust the seat. And the reason I'm doing that is to try to take a little more advantage of this hump, this lumbar support area in the back pad. You'll notice by moving the seat down, there's a little more room for her bottom to go in underneath here between the bottom of the back pad and the seat. So her low back is more curved around this area. So let's have a seat and see how it fits, all right? Yeah, I think that's going to be good.
Great.
Ready to feel that right in your low back? Now the next thing, this harness is great. It's got a handle on each side. You can just reach overhanded and grab with your thumb underneath, and you're ready to go. But I do want to show you an alternative grip that some people think is really comfortable. If you have trouble gripping that, or if it gets uncomfortable to do it after you get tired, just pull the grip up, the handle up, and you can put your hand through the webbing. And now you don't really have to grip much at all. It's not required to have strength in order to hold the thing, right? Pull the harness down to where it's right around your neck, not tugging hard on your neck, you're just holding it securely. And now the next thing could be the most important. And it has to do with the way you engage, the way you think about the exercise and the way you perform the exercise so that you're not wasting your time and also not hurting yourself. So many times, I know you've seen this, Angela, where people get on here and they just start yanking on the machine, or they're laying on the floor doing crunches and they're just throwing their head up and down. You know what I'm talking about? The whole idea is to think about what happens from here to here. This is it. This is all that matters. All of this is just going along for a ride. And here's how we're going to start. We're going to think about tightening these muscles, just like little biceps inside of there that you're gripping and tightening, and then you're using them like rubber bands to pull your ribs towards your pelvis. And keep tightening as far as you can go. But notice she did not go all the way forward with her hip flexors. Show me that some people lean all the way forward. See, we're not trying to go forward at the hips. We're just trying to crunch in the spine. So try that one more time, nice and tight. Tighten, tighten, tighten. Think about what's happening here, and then use that muscle tightness to let yourself slowly clear back towards the bench and your rib cage up high. Tighten and come back down again. Ultimately, when you get good at the control, you're going to try to keep that tension all the way up and all the way down for all the repetitions you can do until you fatigue from the resistance. How does it feel?
Great.
Pretty good. This is the seated oblique ab crunch. And this movement is a diagonal, but it works much more than just your oblique abdominal muscles. In fact, your oblique abdominal muscles, the ones on the side of your trunk, they were working in the resisted ab crunch that we did, the one that just went straight away. It works in every single exercise you're doing for your abdominals. And in this oblique ab crunch, the middle muscles, called the rectus, they're working also. So you're really addressing all of these muscles. There's nothing isolating about it, but it's a very important motion. So you would think oblique, think diagonal. Now we're going to set up the machine a little bit differently. We're not going to use these posts up here. We're going to leave the pulleys down here, and you're actually only going to use one at a time. So as we hook up the harness, you'll just hook up one side because the resistance needs to pull from the diagonal. Now again, I'm going to lower the seat just about a notch so that Angela's lumbar or low back area can fit right around the red section. And so just have a seat there, Angela. Not much setup to this one. And go ahead and grab this with both hands so it's nice and stable around you. But notice the cable pulling from one side. Now her whole motion is going to be starting with her shoulder back here and then crunching and twisting at the same time as if she's taking this shoulder that way. But she does it with the abdominals, not just thinking about throwing the shoulder, but thinking about tightening and crunching from here to there. So let's try that. There we go. Now remember, she's working the muscles. This is not spot reduction. She still has to do her aerobics. She still has to eat right in order to see these abdominals she's developed. Just a few more. Notice when she comes back, the shoulder comes all the way back and then down and across. Not bringing any hips into it. That's perfect control. This is standing trunk rotation. It's so nice to have a machine like the SE where we can do these standing trunk exercises. The first thing we're going to do, notice we removed the seat. And I'm going to stand on the platform, but right now Angela's facing the side. I want her to turn just a little bit perfect. So she's really not facing away from the machine and not facing sideways, kind of at an angle, okay? So she's sitting there at about a 3/4 kind of a turn, and then we're going to take the resistance just from one side. And notice I have the pulley set on the second to the narrowest hole or adjustment for right now. We're going to take a look at how we can adjust that in a minute. But notice Angela's arms are right beside her body. She grabbed it with the right hand and then just placed the left hand right over it so that the hand closest to the machine, she's got it up tight around the grip and the other hand is just loosely around her other hand. And now we're simply going to have her rotate away and towards the machine really carefully. And there's a couple things she can do. She can start by just trying to move in the trunk alone. This takes a lot of control, but notice she moves just in the trunk and she's trying her best not to move her pelvis or her legs. And go ahead and turn back towards the machine all the way. So you can really take advantage of just trunk motion, or she can go ahead and turn everything, turning in the hips a little bit, turning in the top a little bit, and even her shoulder blades are moving a little bit, and getting a greater degree of motion from top to bottom. Both of those exercises are going to be great for you. You just need to decide which one you're going to do, and maybe one day you do it one way, the next time you do it a different way, involving more muscles top to bottom. Now, there are some things you can adjust here. The first thing you could look at adjusting is the placement of the pulley and how the angle of the resistance affects you. You're going to need to see how it feels, because we might find that she's actually able to move a little bit further before the cable comes in contact with her by moving this outward. So that changes things. The next thing you can adjust, notice she started with her arms back here by her side. Now we're going to move to where her elbows are near the front of her body. That moves her hands further out, and that makes it a little tougher. You know that if you have a weight and you put it further and further and further out your arm, it gets heavier. This is the same type of thing. So she could do it now, stabilizing her elbows near her stomach for the same two types of rotation exercises. And if she's really tough, and she is, you can straighten out your arms even more. Work hard to stabilize them and hold them there, because it's not an arm exercise. You're just not trying to move it with your arms. You're doing all the motion from right down here. You can see it working with Angela. That is perfect control. But that is going to be the toughest version. I would work up to that. Don't get in a hurry. And of course, after you do this exercise, you're going to want to use the pulley on the other side with the handle and appropriate weight, and do your resistance, your torsion, to the opposite direction.
There are some very important things for you to pay close attention to when performing your leg extension. Now, the first thing is getting into it, because it starts with a pretty decent range of motion. So Angela may actually have to get up a little bit, or because of the weight we've got on here, she could lift it up a little bit with her hand. But don't feel bad or think that something's wrong if you actually have to get your bottom out of the seat a little bit to get your leg in there, because you may have to if you have a challenging resistance. Now, the first thing you've got to look at, and that you've got to maintain the whole time you're doing the exercise, look at where your kneecap is sitting. It's so important. Notice that hers is right here on top. So many times I've seen people that they'll sit here and their legs are kind of turned to the outside. And what's going to happen with that, do that for a second and straighten out. Sorry to do this to you. But when we do this, the force of the leg extension is going across the knee rather than through the hinge or the axis of the joint. Please pay close attention to this. Watch how she may actually need, and she's already perfect on it. If you're sitting there with your knees turned outwards a little bit, then you might have to roll them in a little bit. Not too much, but just where your kneecap is right on top. Now, what about your ankle, your foot position? A lot of people think, turn your feet in, it works something. Turn your feet out, it works something. Your quads don't know that you have feet, so don't worry about them. Okay, just let them hang there. Worry about knee position. That's the main thing. Now, most folks are going to be able to go to full extension and squeeze that muscle, and it's going to be good. If you throw it or kick it, I'm just going to ask that you not do that. Be really controlled with it, okay? The other thing is, you may have to grab a hold of the bottom of the seat, secure yourself down in there. You will want to keep this posture. Yes, it's important on every single exercise. And the only other thing I haven't mentioned, this is adjustable. It's adjustable typically, like in the gym, because people have different leg lengths or lower leg lengths. But take a little tip. I use it personally, even though I've got a pretty long lower leg, I use it in the highest position, because the closer this is to the axis, the more you reduce forces on the knee that are typically called shear, and a lot of people have trouble with those. So you can do whatever you want, but if you're concerned about your knees, this highest position really works out well for a lot of folks. Now, the squat is such an intricate exercise. There are so many things to think about, and so many people end up getting hurt doing it, and there's no reason for that at all. On this exercise, you really need to face outward, because the angle of the squat plate will accommodate the angle of your feet, where your toes are a little bit wider than your heels. So this works very well. I would also move the pulley to the widest position. Now, the neatest thing about the Xtreme are these adjustable straps that can help you determine your range of motion and help you progress. You don't have to go to the full range of motion the first day. In fact, you should always, always work up to greater ranges of motion. So right now, Andy's got the bar resting back here on his back, not up on his neck, but back here on these muscles, the traps, and on the back of his shoulders. And if you have any trouble putting your shoulder in this position, you might not be able to do this particular exercise, but you could do it with the handles down here by your side and do the exact same thing. Now, what we can do is have him slowly squat down, and I'm going to adjust these for him. And now he can come up and go down a few times, and these may be shorter than what he wants to do, but I want to look at his form first. Don't even go quite so low, Andy. I want to see some things. Notice keys to the squat. Take your knees forward, stick your butt out the back, keep your chest up. So many times people squat like this, keeping their butt tucked under them. You're going to kill your back doing that. So watch what he does. His knees are going the same direction that his toes are pointed. That's critical, so you don't mess up your knees. He's keeping his spinal alignment perfect. You've got to. And the keys to that, like I said, are thinking about sticking your butt out, stick your butt out, and keep your chest up. Don't let it cave in. Now, if you like this range of motion, you feel like you could go more, it's pretty lightweight, you want to try a little bit lower? I can give him more range. So basically, there's a limitless range that you can have resistance through, based on the fact that the Xtreme has these really nice straps. As you're doing a squat, you must not allow your form to waver at all as you get fatigued. When you stop your exercises, should not necessarily in the beginning be based upon the number, like 10 or 11 reps. It should be based on whether you're doing them right or not. And then when you're doing them right, up to the 10 or 11, then you can stop. Hip adduction, or what people typically call inner thigh work, is very important. There are a lot of very important muscles between your hip and your knee on the inside of your thigh. So, reach out to the side, and one thing I really want you to watch is how far Angela goes. She pretty much doesn't cross over, she just goes in front of the other foot, right in line with the other foot. And watch what happens if she does cross over. See how it actually came from moving the spine? It didn't come from the hip. So there's really no reason to do that. In fact, we could even say there's reasons not to. So we're going to reach out as far as we can, and then we're going to come right in even with the other foot, or even just up to the other foot would be fine as well. A lot of people call hip abduction outer thigh training. Well, there's no part of the outer thigh that's participating at all. That's another one of those myths. But there are a lot of hip muscles that are important to address here. And all we have to do is hook up the ankle cuff. The resistance is pulling towards midline or across her body. And she's going to slowly take her leg outward. Now, don't get caught trying to take it out like a ballerina, because in order to do that, you'll see a lot of people move their whole pelvis. We want to keep the pelvis pretty stable and pretty flat. And again, if you have a mirror to look at, that's going to help. But about 30 to 40 degrees out to the side is really all we're going to need on this. Now, again, you're not going to spot reduce with this exercise, but all of these muscles are vital to hip function as well as looking pretty nice. There are a couple variations of a calf raise that you can do on the Xtreme. The one I suggest you start with is a single leg, because you can use the other hand to grab onto the pad, or even up here on the lat tower to help stabilize yourself. Put the ball of your foot, not just your toes, but the ball of your foot up onto the squat plate, and let your heel and arch be slightly off of it, so you can actually have some movement up and down. You'll notice Angela has resistance on one side, the side she's not stabilizing with, and she's going to slowly just lift this right leg off the ground, yep, and do all the exercise with the left leg. Scoot your foot back just a little bit on the platform. There you go. Now you can go down if it's comfortable. Don't just flop down, control it down and control it back up. And if you've never worked calves before, don't do very many the first time. I've known so many people that couldn't get out of bed the next day, even doing the lightest, even just their body weight with a calf exercise. Now, a little tougher version is where you have to stabilize. You're going to use both legs and both sides for resistance, but you have to control your balance more. And that's pretty neat to be able to work on that stability while working on these lower leg muscles. So this is Soleus and Gastroc and a couple other guys helping out in there. But you can see her going as high up as she can try to go, and then really controlling it down. Perfect. Now there are two great variations on hip extension that can be performed on the Xtreme. You need to set up the handle in the arch cuff, where it goes over the top of the foot with the D-ring, under the arch with the grip, and behind the heel with the cuff part. And And that really allows it to stay stable on your foot. Now, the first one we're going to do is a bent knee hip extension. You'll notice Angela's going to keep her knee position, the angle between her lower leg and her thigh, the same the whole time. And she's going to slowly extend backwards, taking great care not to move right here in the spine. A lot of times people will try to get way far back there and do a lot of spinal motion at the same time. So you want to watch that. The other version we can do is a simple straight leg version. So you should just straighten the knee out. And I don't know that you want to lock your knee, because locking is actually a slight bend backwards, but you want to keep it near straight and just take the whole leg straight backwards. Now these are great hip extensor, glute exercises, but they will not spot reduce. There's no resistance training that'll spot reduce. So you're going to have great muscles underneath here, but you've got to watch what you eat and you've got to do some cardio. The leg kickback is a neat little exercise that combines hip extension with knee extension, kind of like a leg press. Now we've got the arch cuff on the foot down there, and Angela's going to bend her hip and her knee just a little bit to start with, and then straighten everything backwards. So we've got the quads straightening the knee, we've got a little bit of gastroc or calf activity. You can see hamstrings and glutes, pretty much the entire lower leg. Now, I want you to realize we can never spot reduce fat, but that doesn't mean this isn't a good exercise. In fact, all these muscles we're talking about are the ones that you're looking at when you see a body that you appreciate, because it's the shape of the muscles that makes those nice curves. Standing hip flexion is great on the extreme. It is so much better than using an ankle weight, because an ankle weight, you have nothing to start with. If you go fast, there's a whole bunch of inertia, like flyaway type motion, you know what I'm talking about. But with this, it's great because the resistance is pulling backwards from the beginning, and as Angela starts to take her knee forward, bending the knee, the resistance actually decreases very slightly because of a mechanical relationship between the resistance and the hip. So this is a great exercise. As she moves into the toughest position to stabilize, she's got an appropriate resistance for it, and that's really nice. The barbell deadlift is kind of like a squat, just with the bar in a different place. So you can think about all the same important things. Watch Andy's posture as he starts to slowly lower. He's going to stick his butt out the back. He's going to keep his chest out. He's not going to let his back round, and the bar just goes down to right maybe at his knees or below his knees. And that is totally determined by how good you are at keeping all these positions. Now, go ahead and come up, Andy. And that's, you can see why it's like a squat so much, because the same exact joint motions, the same exact muscles are working. You're typically going to feel maybe a little bit more in your low back when you're doing this. And because of that, it's even more important to concentrate on this position. So let's see a few good ones. Give us a demonstration. Yep. And you could even bend those knees just a little bit more, like a regular old deadlift. There you go. Bend them more. Very nice. The stiff-legged deadlift is a tough exercise to do right. And I'm going to say that it's for the more advanced of you. Don't get in a hurry. Try to jump into this thing before you're ready, because you can really mess up parts of your body doing this. It's a good exercise, especially on the extreme. Much better than when using a free weight. But you've got to be so careful with these specific things. Number one, stiff-legged doesn't mean locked kneed. You can keep your legs straight or very slightly bent. That's the objective, but don't just lock them out. Can we see what locked out looks like, Andy? Yeah, that's really not what we want. You're going to use the muscles to keep them a little bit in front of the locked position. The next thing is, golly, making sure that this spine and trunk doesn't move relative to its position. Now it moves in space. You bend forward at the hips, but you don't want it to bend within the spine itself. And that's tough. Now the key for you to think about, the cue for you to keep in mind, is to take the butt backwards. Take your hips backwards. If you try to take your whole body forward, you're going to lose your balance, and it's a lot tougher on your back. It's not going to work. So watch Andy. He's doing a great job for you. He's so experienced with this. So you could even keep a little better constant position in the knees. Yep. But the spine is just perfect here. And again, that is so critical. Now it's actually nice on the Xtreme because when he goes forward to this more challenging position, the rods aren't bent as much. So he has a little less resistance, and that's kind of cool. And you can't do that with a free weight, all right? So it's a tough exercise, and if you're going to do it, the Xtreme is the place. Thank you for purchasing a Bowflex Xtreme. You'll enjoy your new Bowflex home gym for many years to come. Check out the Bowflex lineup of books, videos, and personal training software at bowflex.com. I'm Tom Purvis reminding you that as crucial and important as resistance training is, you've got to change your overall lifestyle if you want to improve your quality of life and live a healthier, happier tomorrow.